Picture Birmingham, 1919, smoke hanging low over the rooftops, a city stitched together by factories, war wounds, and whispered threats. In the middle of it all stands one man with cold blue eyes and a plan nobody else can see the shape of. Thomas Shelby. By the 5th episode of the first season, the Peaky Blinders are standing on a knife's edge. The stolen guns are still hidden. Inspector Campbell is closing in. The IRA wants answers, and inside the Shelby family itself, old wounds are beginning to open again. Thomas Shelby is dealing with danger from every direction. But some of the biggest threats in this episode don't come from rival gangs or the police. They come from the past. The episode opens with Thomas standing at a grave marked with the name Danny Whiz Bang. The scene is quiet, almost peaceful, but there is something unsettling about it. The grave is connected to one of the biggest secrets the Shelby family is protecting. Meanwhile, Polly goes to check on Ada, who is struggling after Freddie Thorne's arrest. Ada is alone with her newborn baby, isolated from the rest of the family. Polly finds an old basket of food sitting outside the door, untouched and spoiled. She leaves a fresh basket without forcing Ada to talk. It's a small moment, but it shows how much pain is spreading through the Shelby family. Freddie is still in prison, suffering the consequences of everything that has happened. His absence has left Ada emotionally devastated, while the Shelby family continues to move forward with its own dangerous business. At the garrison, Thomas meets Grace. He marks a date on her calendar with a black star and tells her that this is the day he intends to make his move against Billy Kimber. What's important about this moment is not simply the plan itself. It's the fact that Thomas is trusting Grace with information that even some members of his own family don't know. Thomas Shelby trusts almost nobody, yet Grace is slowly becoming someone he allows into his world. But while Thomas is planning his next move, someone from the Shelby family's past suddenly returns. At a boxing match, Arthur Shelby Jr. sees his father, Arthur Shelby Sr., standing among the crowd. Arthur Sr. abandoned his family years earlier. For Thomas and Polly, his return is nothing more than an old wound reopening. But Arthur Jr. sees things differently. Arthur is desperate for his father's approval. He wants to believe that his father has changed. He brings him back to the family home and invites him to dinner. The atmosphere immediately becomes uncomfortable when Thomas arrives and sees his father sitting at the table. His attitude changes completely. Thomas has no interest in hearing excuses. Arthur Sr. tries to explain himself and presents himself as a changed man. But Thomas doesn't believe him. He reminds his father that the family needed him years ago, when they were struggling and growing up without him. They didn't need him now. Thomas eventually orders him to leave. Arthur Jr. is devastated. He doesn't understand why Thomas can't give their father another chance. The confrontation reveals something deeper about Arthur and Thomas. Arthur wants the father he never had, while Thomas has already accepted that the man is incapable of being that father. Arthur even tells Thomas that he isn't so different from their father. The words hit Thomas harder than he wants to admit. Later, at the garrison, Grace is working through the pub's financial records. She notices payments being made to Danny Whiz Bang. The problem is that Danny Whiz Bang is supposedly dead. Grace has already seen his grave. She asks Arthur about the payments, but he immediately tells her not to ask questions she doesn't want answered. That warning only makes Grace more suspicious. She visits Danny's grave herself and begins to understand that something is being hidden. Meanwhile, Arthur Jr. meets his father again, this time with young Finn. Arthur Sr. presents an opportunity. He claims that he can start a business venture in America, and Arthur, desperate to believe in his father, gives him money. For Arthur, this isn't really about business. It's about finally having his father's approval. Afterward, Arthur and his father enter the boxing ring together. It's almost like a celebration, but beneath the surface, Arthur is simply enjoying the attention of the father he spent years wanting. At the same time, another threat arrives in Birmingham. A man named Malachi Byrne comes to the garrison, looking for Thomas. Byrne is connected to the IRA. He tells Thomas that his cousin was killed and that he believes Thomas knows exactly what happened to the stolen guns. He isn't there to negotiate. He wants the weapons. Thomas remains calm. Instead of admitting fear, he turns the situation into a business proposition. He tells Byrne that the guns can be sold. Thomas is buying time, but he knows that sooner or later he will have to deal with Byrne. So Thomas goes to Inspector Campbell. Campbell has been hunting for the stolen weapons throughout the season, and Thomas understands that the police can be useful when pointed at the right enemy. Thomas offers Byrne to Campbell, hoping to use the inspector's authority against the IRA threat. It's another example of how Thomas operates. He doesn't need friends. He needs people who can be useful. Later that night, Thomas returns to the garrison. He knows Byrne is coming. He warns Grace that the situation could become dangerous and gives her a gun. He tells her to stay hidden until he gives her a signal. When Byrne arrives with another man named McGuire, Thomas pretends to negotiate. He offers to reveal where the stolen guns are hidden in exchange for money. The atmosphere becomes increasingly tense. Thomas raises his glass and gives the coded signal. Grace appears with the gun, but everything goes wrong almost immediately. Grace shoots McGuire. The situation erupts into violence. Byrne attacks Thomas, and the two men begin fighting. For a moment, Thomas is in serious danger. The fight triggers memories of the war. Thomas is pulled back into the trenches, surrounded by the sounds and images of the violence he experienced as a soldier. His past and present begin to blur, but Thomas survives. He manages to overpower Byrne and beats him to death. It's not a clean victory. It's brutal and desperate. When it is finally over, Thomas and Grace are left standing in the aftermath. Both shaken by what has happened, they embrace, not because everything is suddenly romantic, but because they have just survived something terrifying together. When the police finally arrive, Thomas is furious. He walks Grace home afterward and apologizes for putting her in such danger. But Grace's situation is becoming more complicated by the minute. She returns to Inspector Campbell and tells him that she wants to leave. At the same time, she gives him information about where she believes the stolen guns are hidden. But she makes one condition clear: Campbell must not hurt Thomas. Campbell agrees. Grace is now caught between two worlds. She has been working with Campbell, but her feelings for Thomas are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. That evening, Grace sings an Irish song inside the garrison while Thomas watches her. Neither of them needs to say what is happening between them. Their relationship has already changed. Elsewhere, Arthur is waiting for his father, but his father never comes. At the train station, Arthur finally finds him leaving Birmingham with the money he had given him. Arthur tries to stop him. His father refuses. The man who disappeared from Arthur's childhood has now taken advantage of him as an adult. Arthur is crushed. He has lost the father he wanted for a second time. Later, Arthur asks Polly whether Thomas knows about the money. Polly tells him that Thomas doesn't know, but Arthur needs to tell him himself. Arthur is humiliated and drunk. He goes looking for a fight at the boxing venue, but even that doesn't give him the release he needs. He is completely broken. Meanwhile, Campbell continues hunting Thomas. Thomas knows the police are getting closer, but he still goes to see Grace. Suddenly, Finn arrives with a warning. The police are nearby. Grace makes a decision. She takes Thomas back to her home and hides him there. Campbell eventually discovers where Thomas has gone. He arrives outside Grace's house and looks through the window. He sees Thomas inside with Grace. Campbell understands exactly what is happening, but instead of storming inside, he walks away. He calls off the operation. Inside the house, Thomas and Grace finally stop resisting the feelings that have been building between them. They sleep together. Afterward, Thomas shows Grace a side of himself that he rarely allows anyone to see. He asks her to stay. He asks her to help him with everything. His life, his business, all of it. For a man like Thomas Shelby, that is an enormous admission. He has spent his entire life believing that depending on someone is weakness. Now, for the first time, he is asking someone to stay beside him. But while Thomas is finding a moment of emotional peace, Arthur is reaching his darkest point. The betrayal by his father has destroyed him. The trauma of the war, the pressure of the family business, and years of emotional damage have finally become too much. Arthur attempts to take his own life by hanging himself, but the rope breaks. Arthur falls to the ground, alive but badly shaken. It is one of the darkest moments of the episode. The man who looks so powerful and violent from the outside is revealed to be deeply damaged. Underneath, Arthur isn't simply a gangster, he's a broken soldier who has spent years trying to survive a life he doesn't know how to escape. Later, Thomas sees the bruising around Arthur's neck. Thomas doesn't respond with an emotional speech. That's not how the Shelby brothers communicate. Instead, he uses dark humor. He reminds Arthur that the three brothers are equal partners in the family business and jokes that if Arthur dies, his brothers would simply make more money. Then he tells him that next time he should use a gun. The words sound cruel, but underneath them is something much more important. Thomas is telling Arthur to stay alive. He needs his brother. The family needs him. Thomas also learns that Campbell may be leaving Birmingham, giving the Shelbys a temporary sense of relief. But there is no real peace in the Shelby world. The episode closes with the Shelby family and their associates gathered together. Thomas sits quietly, reading the newspaper before heading back into the dangerous world outside. Everything looks calm for a moment, but the violence, betrayal, secrets, and emotional damage are still there. Beneath the surface. Thomas has survived another threat. Grace has crossed a line she cannot easily uncross. Arthur has survived his darkest moment, and the Shelby family is still standing, but they are far from safe. What makes this episode so powerful is that the biggest battles aren't only fought with guns. Thomas is fighting his past, Grace is fighting between loyalty and love, Arthur is fighting his own mind, and the entire Shelby family is fighting to survive the consequences of the life they've chosen. The grave at the beginning of the episode represents more than a hiding place for stolen weapons. It reflects the world these characters live in, a world where the past is constantly buried, only to rise again when they least expect it. Thomas may be able to control a room, he may be able to manipulate the police, rival gangs, and even his own family, but he cannot completely control his past, and he cannot completely control his feelings for Grace. For the first time, Thomas Shelby is beginning to understand that power doesn't always mean standing alone. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing a man can do, allow someone else to get close, and for the Shelby family, the real war is only beginning. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to Screen Central for more detailed episode breakdowns, ending explained videos, and deep dives into your favorite TV shows and movies. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode.